Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's that time of the week, month, patch, tier list time. God balance, where is the power, who holds it? All of these questions will be answered in this one, at least in my opinion. I've played a lot of games. I've watched a lot of games over the past couple of weeks. I can't remember when the patch came out, but I'm feeling like I've got a fairly good idea of where the actual balance is for these gods, or the power for these gods are. Before I jump into it, a couple of things to say about how I'm going to do this tier list. So thing number one is I'm going to be going through strategies, reasons why these gods are doing so good. In terms of what a strategy is, you've got an S tier strategy, you've got A tier strategy, you've got B tier strategies. If you're going to play one of these gods and you're going to try and do something like off meta, it might just be that strategy is not very good. It's not because the god's not able to be very strong, but if you go into that line of play, you're going to have some troubles, right? So we're going to try and explain how that's going to work. If I say a strategy and you guys really want to learn that strategy, if you don't really know how to execute it, leave a comment below. And if you see that strategy commented and you really want that one as well, make sure you hit a thumb up on that comment. If I see enough thumbs up on a strategy, I might make a strategy guide for said god. But the other thing that I want to preface before we do this is for upper levels of play. It probably seeps down to the mid levels, probably around about 1400-ish and above is where I reckon you'll see a lot of this stuff kind of having effect. If we go any further down in the sort of elo, I would say that these gods, it doesn't really matter. Mostly it's all about just trying to play really well and make good decisions and make good macro decisions and good army movement and all of that stuff, good fundamentals, and you will rank up. But if you want to see a tier list for the lower levels of play, let me know as well. I'm not sure I have the knowledge of how that works, but I'll try and break down why I think certain gods aren't really functioning that well at the top level. Certain gods aren't functioning. Gods that are at the top level functioning well aren't functioning very well in lower levels of play. Without further ado, let's jump into this. And I'm going to give you my pick for the S tier god currently in Age of Mythology Retold. It is Ra. It is still Ra, and it's probably been Ra for I don't know how many patches. But the more players get into this god and understand this god, the more they are sort of figuring out how good this can be. I don't want to toot my own horn. I said this god was pretty strong when everyone was saying that he was terrible on the first patch. I genuinely believe if we went back to the first patch, Ra would be doing better today than he was back then. So given that he's received a ton of buffs as well, players have gotten better at using this god, he is now very much on the S tier podium. Now, why is he here? So strategy number one that I think is incredibly oppressive is a 4 monument opener with set. It's Sphinx, it's Eclipse, and it's all in. I think it's really, really strong. I don't know if it's unbeatable for all gods. I played a game against Kovoth recently where I played Kronos versus his Ra, and I feel like I almost found my way to a victory in that game. I was very far in front in economy, and I made some poor decisions and control problems with my army, but I feel like I was very, very close, and if I follow that roadmap again and I face that strategy again, I might be able to find some victories there. However, there's another strategy that I think is also really, really good, which is just a 2 town center, fast heroic into mass chariot archers. This thing is dominating a ton of the roster with Sekhmet and Bombo and farms with rain and all of that stuff. Also, there's another strategy that's fantastic against the Norse, which is again a fast second town center, but you're going to drop a barracks as well, get out a bunch of axemen, and the Norse player will not be able to get a second town center if you play that correctly. So there's 3 incredibly potent strategies which work for the vast majority of the roster. And then to top it all off, he's still got Osiris. And while it was nerfed, I don't think it was really touched where it's really, really oppressive, which is the Son of Osiris. This unit is dealing something like 60 divine damage per second in a fight because it chains that lightning to 3 or 4 foes, for 3 or 4 enemy units, absolutely dominates it. If you're playing against a player that is really good at controlling that unit and not losing it, you're going to have a tough time actually ever killing the Ra, and he is just going to get good trade after good trade into a victory. So for all of those reasons, he is my S tier. There's one final thing that Ra has, which is infuriating to me because it really shuts down any sort of aggressive play that I want to do, and that's Skin of the Rhino. I think this technology was misunderstood. It's one villager. You lose one villager for never losing a villager again for the rest of the game. So if you're going to go for a fast second town center and your opponent's going to go for a 1 town center gold starve, get this technology, get a whole bunch of units, walk to your gold mine, fight with the villagers, fight with the army. Bob's your uncle, Suzanne's your aunt, and you win the game. I've played against Chemo quite a few times, and I just don't think there's a way through there. Okay, so that there is my S tier. I don't think there's another S tier. I don't think there's another god that actually competes with Ra. There might be a god that can compete with Ra, kind of, but then fails against a lot of other gods. And I'll get into that one a little later. The next god on this list, and without any real order, this is not in order. This is the A tier. Everyone in this list, I feel like, is kind of on a similar level to some degree. Now, the first one I'll say is maybe a touch above everyone else. I'm still not 100% sure. Isis is sitting here. She's got a lot of the same power that Ra has, but I do think she's going to struggle against some other gods, which Ra won't struggle against because she doesn't have Ptah. I think that is a really, really strong minor god, which covers a lot of matchups with Scalloped Axe for the Axeman to really painfully inflict pain on the Norse, and also no access to Horus means no super axemen to deal with like Thor and stuff like that in the late game. So yeah, I think I'm not 100% sure. She might be S tier, but I don't think she competes with Ra. I think a good Ra should be able to hold whatever the Isis is going to throw at him, and yeah, it's going to be fine. So good strategies for Isis. Isis has also got that Sphinx strat. It's still there. Ra's is better because he has double food in his base, double hunt. He's got berries and he's got the starting hunt. So if you're playing on a map like Tundra, you can kind of role play as Ra there with Isis. Isis does have prosperity though, so she can pump out a ton of the Sphinx with the with the prosperity to help out. And you can obviously hit an Ancestor's Eclipse timing attack with a fast heroic, or not a fast heroic, but like a semi-fast heroic, and that can be really brutal as well. So she's got that. She's also got the Osiris to help out at the back, and any sort of 2 town center slow push with Osiris is going to be really, really brutal for a lot of the the gods to deal with, the major gods to deal with. But she's sitting here. The next god on this list, again, no real order with this. These are all just really, really strong. Thor sitting here. I think he was sort of overblown at the start of this patch. Everyone kind of thought that the Egyptians were getting over-nerfed. There was a vocal minority of players who thought that Egyptians were getting over-nerfed. But, the Egyptians are still kind of beating Thor. Thor is in a really good spot. Super, super strong. Economy off the charts. His units are still a little weak. If you can get past the sort of pain of playing against Thor, then you're going to be in a good spot. Thor's got 2 strategies right now that I think are really, really strong. One is the Dwarven Armory opening and then just sitting in your base and trying to boom up a really strong economy, pushing out with a lot of upgrades, slowly taking the map and then slowly taking the game, just making sure that you make good decisions. Score reading is important as well because his scouting's not so good. You can kind of judge if your opponent's going for a second town center, and getting a second town center a minute or 2 later with Norse is not that bad. The other strategy I think is really, really nice is Matrius has come up with one. I've come up with one myself, which is a 330 advance with Thor with early pressure. So you've got this really boomy build and you've got this really aggressive build that I think is just really, really strong. And after I haven't really played with it, but I played against it, I think that it is a really good way to go for Thor as well if you want to play a different style. It might not be that S plus tier strat of the Dwarven Army opening, but it's definitely an A tier plus sort of idea for Thor. And it'll throw everyone off when playing against you. And this is really, really good against gods like Kronos as well. If we continue along the list of gods, the next one up in here, I think Gaia didn't get nerfed, didn't get buffed. She was really strong in the last patch. She's still really strong here. She did get Implode nerfed tiny bit. I don't even care. I want to go Hecate in like 9 out of the 10 matches I'm playing right now with Gaia. Reason being is for super dryads in a late game, plus the highway trade route with my Gaia Lush, the highway to Gaia Lush. And yeah, she's really, really good. I think she can compete in some degree. I think she can compete with Isis. Don't know about Ra. I struggle against Gaia, but I've been seeing the Sphinx strat absolutely wrecking Gaia players. So I'm not 100% sure, but you know, she's a good A tier right now. The strategy or the build that everyone's doing with her is an economic guild with both the upgrades and about a 3-minute 55 or 4-minute advance time into a lot of Murmillos, and then from there just kind of playing Age of Mythology. You can also go for a fast second town center with Gaia. It's really, really strong as well. I don't think I'm missing anything. There is Rhea that got boosted, but I still don't think that's a pickable god. I still think Thea, Hecate is your answer. There are some interesting ideas with going for like Rhea and Hecate to get like to trade your opponent's strong myth units and then have them be super with Celerity and Mythic Rejuvenation. That being said, I think the safer option is just Thea every single game, pretty much with the exception on water maps. But we're not really taking into account water maps in this tier list. Next god on this list, this is a long A tier. I'll go out there and say it. I think the game is actually in a pretty good state balance-wise for a lot of these gods. Next god on the list here is Set. I think Set got boosted in the last patch, and I think he is really, really strong. He's a really hard god to play. You have to have a lot of knowledge of it, but he's got mass monuments, Anubites, are really good. You can also go for a lot of Wadgets. Wadgets were nerfed, but I still think Wadgets are good in certain situations, which is what I think they should be. So I'm happy that they got nerfed, and I'm happy with the state that they're in at the moment. I still think they're usable and very, very strong, mind you, but not oppressively broken. The strategies, which I think are good with Set, are very similar to the Ra strategies. He's got a 2 town center fast heroic, which is probably more safe than the Ra, because he can have animals are set to defend his second town center while he's building it. But yeah, 2 town center fast heroic with Sekhmet to make bounce chariot archers, 2 town center fast heroic with Sekhmet to go to the mythic age, so a 2 town center fast mythic through Thoth. He's also got access to Anubis, who's going to be making Anubites, which are really, really strong as well. So yeah, there's a lot of options for Set. I think his entire bag is strong at the moment. I think he can do pretty much anything and get wins. But it is definitely very much skill-based, I would say. I think you can outskill Set as well if you play it correctly. So he's sitting in this A tier because I think he's strong, but I do think he is on the skill side of strong. So the good players are going to win with him. The weaker players aren't. Or at least the players who aren't familiar with Set won't win with him. Next god on this list is going to be Zeus. Zeus is here because he's just one-dimensional at the moment. He basically has one strategy and 1.5 strategies, basically. The strategy is effectively Hoplite Minotaur. If you don't do Hoplite Minotaur, you would be doing some sort of centaur idea. Hoplite Minotaur is really, really strong. It'll get him into a position where he's going to have a great game. There's probably some other weird stuff you can do with Centaur and Manticore and things like that, but in general, the Hoplite Minotaur strat is what I think is allowing Zeus to function, and he is in the A tier. On top of that, Athena's got so much power for the Hoplites, and that really helps him get through a lot. Plus, he's got the Hoplite boost as well. Bolt, another big addition to Zeus's kit. or addition, not an addition, but like a big assistance to Zeus's kit, because it allows him to get super aggressive early on with Labyrinth of Minnows. So fast Labyrinth of Minnows, Minotaur in your opponent's base at like 3 minutes and 45, 4 minutes into the game, bolting a hero, and then just going on a rampage for the first little bit while you grab a town center. It's really strong, and it helps level the playing field against a god like Thor. Moving on, another god that I'm thinking is very, very strong right now. You see, I've got so many in the A tier because they just are in the A tier. It's Freyr. Freyr is doing great. He is really, really good. There's some maps where he's going to be terrible. There's some maps where he's going to be really, really strong. And there's going to be other maps where it's like, well, he's kind of good, he's kind of not. He's having some troubles, and maybe he gets there, maybe he doesn't. So he's very map dependent. But I think if you play him at a really high level, you can kind of get away with him on any map. The strategies which I think are good with him are mostly going through Ulla, Aegir, and Vidar, and going for Thrown Axeman, Huskull, Berserk, and that's about it. And Rock Giant. So if you're the only real counters to this is going to be some sort of like counter archer, counter infantry sort of thing. So Peltas to Paspis, for example, great sort of composition. But when you mix in Rock Giants, all of a sudden those Axemen or those Paspis are going to get murdered by the Thrown Axeman while the Rock Giant is taunting them, and then the Huskull are easily going to be able to jump onto the Peltast and clean them up. So it can be really, really challenging. I think it's a micro fest, a micro situation, I should say, for the Hades and the Freyr. Whoever has the better micro should be able to find wins there. You can catch the Rock Giants out really easily with Hades by running one unit at them. If the player is really good, they'll turn off the special, and you're never going to be able to do that. So you can get away with it a little bit, but super fun matchup for the Freyr, super strong. I think you can pretty much do that against every Civ, almost. Maybe not again. Maybe every Civ. You got the Berserks as well. If you don't want to go for the Thrown Axemen, Huskulls, they work nicely. Next one on this list is going to be Loki, again in no order. Loki, he got hit with a small nerf. I think he's still good. He's just really good. He's got Forseti, which is what makes Thor really good as well. These Berserks are insane. He gets myth units for free. I don't know what else to say. There's not really a strategy for Loki that I can see that is like super strong. I just think his kit is just really good. The 20% bonus damage, if you're getting your units to attack the right unit, that's like I've got bronze weapons at the start of the game. Or if I get copper weapons, I'm at iron weapons at the start of the game, which is sort of insane to think about. So yeah, Loki is sitting here. He does have a couple of difficult situations, but I think his kit carries him through. There's also one other thing that I wasn't sure about Loki. Maybe I was going to put him in B tier, but I've seen players starting to do this, and I said this was broken early on. I still think it's broken. The Berserks getting converted for very, very cheap is very, very strong. It allows you to do things like grab a second town center when your opponent can't, and they're going to come and put pressure on. You just convert a whole bunch of villages to Berserks, and all of a sudden, sure, you're behind on villages for like 30 seconds, but you kill off their entire army, and you've got the town center there. So, yeah, it's very, very impressive. But I don't think he's any more powerful than some of the other gods up here. And then finally, the last one in the A tier, as you can see, there's not many gods left. There's really not that many gods left, is Hades. Hades is up here purely because I'm watching Soup play and going, you know what? He's just good. I actually was going to put this god in B tier. I thought he was more of a skill god than like just overall strong, but I think he's sitting here for a similar reason that Zeus is. He's pretty one-dimensional. You get out Minotaurs, you get out Hoplites, but he's got a really, really good late game because he's got Artemis. So you don't have to like go for huge all-ins. You can kind of just sit there and just say, if you don't want to fight me, no worries. Just let me get to Artemis and then I'll win the game. So yeah, he's sitting in a really, really good spot there as well. But yeah, effectively just playing standard here with Hades and just trying to survive. And you can survive against most stuff if you play it well. I do think that it's a challenge. Hades is having a big challenge against the Egyptians as well, which is why maybe in the B tier here, but he's pretty much fine against everything else. So I'm going to put him in the B tier just because of the Egyptian problem. He sucks against chariot archers, Ra and Isis are just going to absolutely abuse him, and he sucks against Sphinx. Ra and Set are going to abuse him. Ra and Isis are going to abuse him with Sphinx. So I just can't. I was going to. I thought he was an A tier god, but I just can't because the Egyptian thing is tough. I'm trying to play it myself a little bit, and I do find that I'm getting there. I think I've got some ideas, and if the ideas work, I can pop him up into A tier, but I haven't unlocked it yet, so not sure. Or at least I haven't seen anyone unlock it yet. But I'm going to go ahead and just put this into the skill tier. This is what I'm calling the skill tier. I don't think these gods are necessarily super weak. I think that they just don't have an innate power inside of them, and it requires you to effectively outplay your opponent to win the game. Whereas you could play a god like Freyr, and you don't have to outplay your opponent. You just have to sit there and not make any mistakes. If you don't make any mistakes on the defense, you win, right? With Freyr. So the next god here is going to be Uranos. So Uranos is sitting here in this skill tier because I think he's actually really hard to play. I think he's got all the power, but it's just hard to access. The sky passages are really good. You can defend against pretty much everything. You're never going to lose any villages if you play it correctly. And he's actually really good against the Egyptians. So against Isis, Ra, Set, I think he's really, really strong. I don't think he's really strong against Ra. I think he is playable against Ra. So keep that in mind. I think he's playable against Ra. So still it's a skill matchup, right? You got a skill. I think you're losing against Gaia. I think you're having some trouble against Hades and Zeus. But you can outskill there. Like is the thing. And there's not really a strategy. The strategy, I guess, is a fast second town center using sky passages into defensive gameplay, trying to find the advantage using Shockwave, Carnivora, Curse, or Thea, Hecate, right? The next god in this one is going to be Poseidon. Again, Poseidon's sitting here as a skill tier, in the skill tier, because literally, if you can outplay your opponent with Poseidon, there's so much outplay potential with Poseidon that you can basically kill anyone. This god can beat, this god can beat Ra, this god can beat Isis, he can beat Thor, he can beat Gaia, he can beat all of these gods. But it is all about you and your ability to outplay your opponent. But the outplay potential is there, so he's doing okay. And then down in the bottom tier here is Odin. There's just too many things that he struggles against, right? He's going to struggle against myth units. He's going to struggle against infantry. He's going to struggle against pretty much everything. I still like him. I still think he's pretty strong, but he is just in this really, really bad place where everything that was strong inside of Odin got nerfed, and he's just sitting here being sad. I'd love to see some buffs for Odin. I don't think he's like a terrible god, but he is in garbage tier. So you take that as you may for how the balance actually is. And then finally, Kronos is in my D tier. I genuinely think this god is unplayable. The matchups that you can play Kronos into are Isis, but Isis has got monument protection, so the deconstruction kind of tough. So if an Isis plays well, Kronos doesn't do much. You might be able to play. I don't think you can play him into Ra. I just don't. Maybe you can make Prometheans work against Ra, but I think the Ra players have caught onto that, and it's not going to work all too well. But you can try it out. You can't beat Thor. Thor is going to win 100% of the time if they play that correctly. You can't beat Gaia. They're just going to make Bite of the Shark Momillo. Set for a similar reason to Ra. I mean, Set's probably a little bit stronger because he's got animals to defend all the stuff. Plus, he can shifting sands on your far second town center, so you can't even do that. Against Zeus, he's just going to go Hoplite Minotaur. You can't defend it. I haven't figured out how. If you know how, let me know. Against Freyr, it's kind of close because you can go for a big cheese against this, but I think that if the Freyr players wisen up, they'll just advance fast against Kronos. It doesn't matter. You win anyways, just by holding on and not taking any damage early. Against Loki, you can get cheesed here, but again, advance quickly. There's a 345 build you can do, which is plenty fast enough. Or you can go 4 minutes, just get the Herser out, and you're totally fine as well. Against Hades, you're going to lose to Hoplite Minotaur. Against Aradas, you're going to lose to Mermilla. And you can see every single one of these gods is sort of trashing on Kronos. Poseidon versus Kronos is, again, a skill matchup, but Poseidon players got the better end of it. And then Kronos versus Odin isn't a terrible matchup. I think you can still win with Kronos versus Odin because Odin doesn't really have an answer for the Prometheans. So, but he's down here because he just can't. He just can't. I swear, it could just be me. I haven't seen anyone else being able to do it, but I think he is very much in Struggletown. Anyways, let me know what you guys think of my tier list. If I'm wrong on anything, which is very, very possible, I did want to go on a bit of a rant about like win rates and stuff like that. In terms of, we got the win rates on a stat called aomstats.io. You can go and check them out and compare them to my tier list. But basically, the way that I see those is the ELO algorithm is bringing people towards 50%. So players are playing people better than them, losing. Players are playing people worse than them, winning, all the way up until the top level. And then even then, there's not enough games at the top level actually being played to really say anything. There's like, I don't know, 20 games per god or something at the moment at 1800 plus. Last time I checked, maybe 30 games. It's just not enough. So yeah, that's my take on it. If you guys enjoyed this tier list, if you guys think that it's accurate, if you think that's terrible, let me know. And I'll see you guys in the next one.